My name is Chris Wanjala. I'm a professor of literature at the University of Nairobi. I'm best known as a literary critic. I comment on literature and do research on literature, art, and culture. I've been doing this for quite some time, since the 1970s. I've published a number of books on what I call literary criticism, and I've also written a novel. I do comment on literature on television, newspapers, and radio. And I've been doing this for very many years, not only locally but also internationally. Now, coming to today's event, I came to this event because, first of all, I know Joe as a colleague, as a writer, a fellow writer. We have interacted for quite a number of years. First of all, when he was the director of broadcasting at the Kenya Broadcasting House. And then later, I got to know him when he joined politics, because at that time I was also interested in politics. And we used to share quite a lot about politics. But I also know that Joe comes from a family of writers. His own father, Francis Hamisi, was a very well-known contributor to the East African Standard and Baraza in those old days. Apart from being a journalist, his father was a politician, one of the early nationalist politicians of this country. And I know that from Joe, and also from my knowledge of Mr. Hamisi Senior, he was quite involved in the nationalist politics of the 1950s and 1960s. So for me, it is not a surprise that Francis Hamisi's own son is also a writer. And what I know about him is that he's a very good communicator, a very good researcher, and he's a very passionate believer in the future of this country.
So about the book, I am aware you are yet to read it, but you know the subject.
I'm very, very excited about the Wretched Africans, which is his third book. I know that Dash for the Dawn is his second book, and then Politics of Betrayal is the one that I've read. I've also interviewed him on television on a station called GBS for about 1 hour. So I think that Joe is coming into the Kenyan literary scene with a very unique kind of chosen field. This is what we call non-fiction, which is normally biography, autobiography, and also it is a memoir, because a memoir can be about one's experience, one's area of life as a professional, or for him, the history of his people, a very, very unique community in Kenya and East Africa, and if anything, in the entire Africa. So for us, we can see Joe has now come home, because previously he may have just been writing in general about Kenya, about politics in Kenya, but now he has now zeroed in onto his own community, and he can now give us the story of where he came from, where he is, and where he's likely to go. And it is not just his personal experience, it is the experience of those people who came to Kenya as slaves from Malawi. And it happens that Dr. David Livingstone, who was a missionary, was actually situated in Malawi. And when he died, it is the family of the likes of Joe Hamisi, who actually carried him all the way. They carried his body from Malawi up to Mombasa and then shipped him over. So this is a family or a community that was very close to David Livingstone, who recognized slave trade as a sore spot on the body politic of the world. He always campaigned against slavery. And that kind of closeness of the people of Freetown with David Livingstone is captured in his story, I believe. And this is an area that is an area of history which has not been touched, because we know so much about slave trade in the Atlantic region, but not the Indian Ocean. And we know so much about slave trade. People went from West Africa to the Caribbean and to the US, but there's very little written about slaves who passed through in the Indian Ocean to Oman and even to the subcontinent of India. And very few people have written about it. I only know of one African American called Professor Joe Harris, who did a book on slaves in India. But Joe's is now, he has now brought the story more openly to us as Africans, as East Africans, and as Kenyans. This is a taboo story for some people, especially the Arab scholars who have written so much about other themes, like Ali Mazrui and so on. But Ali Mazrui and other scholars from the coast have never touched that subject. So it is really a unique contribution from Joe Hamisi.
But is there a place for non-fiction, and especially this kind of stories that are so based on this long-term research, and the stories are from a long time ago? Is there a place for it right now in African literature?
Literature is very important, and what we call autobiography and biography are an integral part of the study of literature. We have had especially fictionalized autobiographies. Like in West Africa we have Kamara Laye, in South Africa we have Zakir Mphahlele with his Down 2nd Avenue. In East Africa we have had Ngugi, Dreams at a Time of War, which is autobiographical. And Ngugi has gone ahead to write in several phases of his life from childhood, Alliance, Makerere, and university. And these books are being read in schools and universities. So far in Kenya, we have had mainly biographies, autobiographies by politicians, like J.M. Kariuki, like Bildad Kagia, Tom Mboya, Freedom and After. But these books are being read in classes of political science and history. But they are not enjoyable for students in second schools. That's why Joe's book, which is written in a very simple, readable style, comes in very, very handy.